Hello everyone, so I finished playing all of Far Cry 6. I've gone through the campaign. I've played around with some of the side missions that you can do at the end or of course during the campaign, and yeah, started a bit of a second playthrough, and you can check out my first playthrough. I'll link the first video to that playlist up top at the end of this video here, but I've done everything. You can watch it on either the YouTube or on my Twitch if that suits you a little better. But yes, this campaign took me, by doing probably a bit more than the average amounts of side quests during the main story. My first playthrough took me about 23 hours to get through, which is honestly pretty solid for a first-person shooter nowadays. And I was able to unlock quite a bit of the playable things that you can get in terms of the buddy system, the guns, the Supremo weapons, all of that good stuff. So without further ado, let me get into my review for Far Cry 6. So Far Cry 6 takes place on the fictional island known as Yara. It's modeled after Cuba and definitely given a lot of the same history that Cuba had to undergo, especially in terms of revolutions within the country due to just the people ruling it, the dictators taking control of not only the island and all of its resources, but the people who supply them for the government as well. And you play as a military dropout, quote unquote. You're more so kicked out of the military, named Danny. And you can either play Danny as a male or female character. I went the female routes just because I usually find when games more focus on one gender or actor / actress than the other, that's usually the one who gives the best vocal performance, and I can definitely tell you that both of them do an amazing job. But I'm with the female Danny Roots in this game, and right at the start of the game, the main villain, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who is named Anton Castillo, sets a recruitment role into the military, but we find out this is just a way for him to go and mass execute people who do not want any part of his regime, who he terms as fake yarns, all throughout this game, and basically forces Danny to use her military skills and go into a freedom fighting group known as Libertad in this game, who is all about taking down the Castillo regime. And I want to say Danny is just an absolute great character and by far my favorite protagonist. I realized that maybe about halfway through the campaign, just because she has, one, a lot of personality to her in ways that are just, well, one, sometimes really fun, where when you're driving vehicles all around Yara, she'll be humming the music that comes onto the radio, and just her banter with other characters throughout this game is really fun, and it's witty. Like, she's just awesome and hilarious, and of course just an absolute badass when she realizes the stakes of everything that's going on around her. Some of the things that she's forced to do, not only to herself, but of course to just in order to save other people. She's absolutely amazing and just a fighter that I think any guerrilla or freedom fighter would look up to in terms of just how brave, strong, and charismatic she can stay throughout all these events. She's absolutely fantastic and great. And of course, a lot of people want to know how Giancarlo Esposito did as Anton Castillo, and amazing. really fantastic performance by him, and he truly crafted a very smart, calm, and cunning villain in this whole entire game. It's very similar to his role of Gus in Breaking Bad, where he never personally wants to snap and lose, like I said, his focus, his control. So he is a very calm, demeaning villain throughout the entirety of this campaign, and that is very intimidating. I do really wish that we would have gotten maybe, like, at the very least half an hour. Probably would have benefited more from an hour with him, though, because a lot of the time we don't get to see him making the actions. They just all of a sudden happen in Danny's story randomly, where it's like, oh shit, Castillo sends this to us, but we never actually get to see him make these orders or truly be in the front line leading his people. I even found that was the same way with a lot of the side villains, where all of them hide behind the NPCs to do their work, and they don't really, you don't really get to see them making a ton of these decisions. And I just wish that a lot of these villains would have been brought into the spotlight a little more like they were in Far Cry 3, instead of just little, oh, now all of a sudden they're in front of you and all it takes is one bullet to get them. Like, little things like that I wish we would have just been able to see these villains unleashed a little bit more. Not to take away from the fact that all these villains are really great. There's even McKay, who's like a Canadian investor who comes into Yara to basically, well, one, just profit off of the exports that this country is trying to make, which is a revolutionary cancer treatment that comes from the production of their tobacco leaves in the country. So tobacco and this revolutionary cancer treatment is what McKay comes into the country to export and profit off of. And of course, too, that's what Castillo is using to bring Yara into the international spotlight, because he's withholding it from all the bigger nations who have never done anything for Yara, and he's waiting for that support in order to open up this treatment to the rest of the world. But of course, slave labor is involved in the production of this treatment and the tobacco, and it comes at the complete expense of the people as opposed to the government. But along the way, you get to meet some really fantastic over-the-top characters that are absolutely amazing from both sides of the political spectrum or the fighting spectrum in this game. You meet some really awesome revolutionaries, like back in 1967. They explain that there was a revolution against Anton Castillo's father, and they're known as the Legends of 67, and they're basically just old, washed up revolutionaries who are, some are craving to get back into the fight, others don't want anything to do with it and just live in peace away from the conflict and the horrors that they once had to experience. There's of course also all the other members of Libertad. There's a group of musicians who want to lead the forefront of Libertad in the fight against Castillo's regime after, of course, a bit more trauma hits them and they realize that they can't just run away from the conflict. There's also all of Castillo's generals who make their way into this game, who bring a lot of life to them as well, but McKay definitely has to be my favorite out of those. There's also a father-son story between Anton Castillo and his son Diego Castillo. A bit of mystery about who the mother is too, but you get to see a lot throughout the story about how Anton never wants what happens to him after his father was killed in 1967 to happen to his son Diego, and there's a lot of protective measures, and everything he's doing is truly to prepare his son to take the mantle up once Castillo he realizes that it's probably going to end in either the death of most of Yara or his own death, but he wants Diego to be ready to take over the throne and continue on the legacy that Anton has built up for the country of Yara. But getting away a bit from the story now, I want to get into the gameplay mechanics, and talking a bit more about some characters is the buddy system introduced into this game. It follows very, very close to, of course, what we saw in Far Cry 5, but there's 5 different buddies you can get, and these stem from dogs to alligators to even a rooster who's ready just to fuck shit up with you this entire game. And of course, they all have their elements where some are better in stealth scenarios, others are better like Guapo the crocodile for straight up combats where you can tell him go eat this guy and he'll go do it. Or with Chorizo, who's like a little tiny chihuahua, he will go distract enemies basically because he's so freaking cute and they'll be distracted. You can get up behind them a lot easier and take them out, or if it gets into a combat scenario, you'll tug on their pants and distract them for a second so you can hit them, and little things like that where they all have their different purposes. And every single mission in this game is tied to kind of this inventory system where each section will have different types of enemies who were susceptible to different kinds of ammo types or tactics. So of course you have your light armored people, your heavy armored people, flamethrower troops, things like that, and there's items in your inventory that will make you less susceptible to the elements that they're going to throw at you, and also be able to hit them harder depending on the inventory, the ammo, and just the perks that all of your clothing and weapons give you in terms of each situation. Of course, your buddy system as well. And this is one thing that I kind of liked, where of course in Far Cry 3 it made a lot of sense that Jason Brody had to learn all these things through the skill tree because he had absolutely no skill sets to him. He had never been put in a situation where he had to kill or fight for his life. But here with Dani, she is ex-military. She has a lot of these skills, so she basically can do everything that Jason was able to at the end of Far Cry 3, where she knows how to assassinate, chain assassinate people, use all these weapons, slide in combat. It gives you all of these things right off the bat, which makes a lot of sense to me, because why wouldn't she know these things? So there is no skill tree. There is just finding and looting certain weapons and armor that have certain perks to them throughout this entire game. So that's done by the shoes you wear, the pants you wear, the shirts you wear, and the helmets if you want. And each of them have, like I said, specific perks. Some will be you deal more damage to enemies with heavy armor, or you're less susceptible to fire. You're more resistant to poison damage, things like that. And your weapons too, you can choose the ammo types that will kick harder against flame enemies, heavy armored enemies, light enemies, armor piercing for tanks, and things like that. And I found a lot of the time, of course, the mission wants you to swap this on the fly and always be ready. You have a weapon ready to go into any scenario and constantly swap out your gear and all these things. But I found that the AI in this game is not good. They're really, really dumb for the most part, and you can shoot people who are right beside them and they'll just look around for a few seconds, and by the time they've even looked like to the left, you can shoot the other guy easily. Like, they don't really react to the changing environments around them too much. So if you have a silencer on, which I did, I had a rifle, and you have a silencer on, you can go in and just shoot every single enemy in the head from a far enough distance, and you're good to go. Like, you're not going to get spotted at all if you want to play the game sneaky. Like, I find any weapon or arsenal that you have, I feel like you can easily get by any section of this game. And one thing too that I do kind of want to applaud to Far Cry 6 is that there is, as far as I've found, there's only one stealth mission that is like, you have to play it stealth, you cannot get caught. Other than that, you can rush in any single way you want. You can go in guns blazing up the start, or if you're like me, you can try your best to sneak around and then get caught and then go loud. But I found, like, in this game, it was really easy to play the stealth way, as long as you just have a rifle and a decent aim to your arsenal where you can just pop headshots, and as long as you're moving slow, you're good to go. But of course, if you want to go in loud, you're definitely going to want to take you to the Supremos, which is basically guerrilla warfare, as they state in this game, is really all about using every single tool at your disposal, and they create weapons out of PVC pipe and like little things that the government probably tosses into the ocean. They grab it and they make weapons out of it. So a lot of it, you have your handheld weapons. Some shoot, some are basically nail guns, flamethrowers, rocket launchers that are made out of like more heavy hitting fireworks, things like that. There's even a gun that like, it's a record player that shoots high powered discs at the enemies, which is nuts, while playing the Macarena. And then of course there is the Supremo backpacks, which have a bunch of different perks in them. Some fire rockets that you can easily use to take out helicopters, tanks, any like basically heavy armored vehicles like that. There's also some that just spew fire or poison to the enemies around you. Some offer a health booster where they basically just put a mist that, as long as you're in it and any of your teammates fighting with you in it, it heals you back up to, not, well, depending on where your health bar is, it heals you a lot. And it was really fun to play around with these Supremo weapons, but I found a lot of the time I was just using the rockets, because the more loud you go, the heavier enemy types that are going to come to you. They're also going to send helicopters and tanks to you. So you have to kill probably about, I want to say 15 to 20 enemies to charge up your Supremo in order to use it. So I found a lot of the time, kill the enemies, launch up the Supremo, and by the time I had it, there was a helicopter coming in. So shoot it down with the rockets, because that was the only backpack that was going to get that done for you. So I found most of the time, most of the situations I was in, that was the best one to have. But for the most part, I did really like the inventory crafting system in terms of making these Supremo weapons, and also to adding silencers, muzzle brakes, just all these little things that you can put onto your guns to personalize them to your play style, and also add a little bit of creative elements to yourself, where you can find spray cans throughout the world to paint your weapons to a style that you want to. There's also like the little gun buddy system, that's a little chain that hangs off the gun if you're into that you want to put onto your guns. And a lot of them are really funny, cute, just fun things to find across all of Yara, and just add a little bit of personality to your weapons, and of course the Danny that you're playing as. And now getting into Yara, easily the best map that they have created for Far Cry. This is just a beautiful island, more so than I want to say Far Cry 3. There's just so lush, full of animals, full of life, full of different types of music, of course, because you have the regime who wants everything uniform, and of course all the people fighting against that. There's great songs that pretty much all are in Spanish or in a Latino style and Latino language, which is just really fun, and it's just this game truly is full of culture in terms of the music, the cars, the ambience, everything that you see the people have built. And even too in the mini games, there's like there's a bunch of games that you can play, like dominoes, the way that you do cooking in this game. There's a cockfighting mini game that's basically chicken Mortal Kombat, which is awesome and pretty fun to play as, really, in this game. And so, yeah, there's a lot of side stuff to do in terms of exploring the island of Yara, where you have, of course, taking out outposts, taking out military AA guns, stealing weapons and tanks and stuff and bringing them to Libertad. Supply run missions, and of course a lot of treasure hunts in this game that kind of go more into the supernatural side of like kind of the older Far Cry games in this. So there is quite a bit to do in this game, but I found that the game after the credits is mostly doing the same things over and over again, because insurgents come into the story at the end of the game and try to retake everything that you've done. So a lot of what you're doing is just retaking back the things that you've already done, if you haven't done all the other side missions yet. So it's just kind of redoing the same checkpoints you already did, and I wish there was just a little bit more to the end game here. And I know the one question that a lot of people are going to ask is Anton the best villain in Far Cry? Giancarlo delivered the best villain performance in all of Far Cry. I easily have to say that, along too with Danny, who easily is my favorite protagonist by a long stretch in all the Far Cry series. But I found that Giancarlo, best villain performance for certain, but I still think Voss is the better villain just because they were able to flesh his character out a little bit more, where I find here Anton needed maybe half an hour more and just more of him making these decisions and going into the spotlight, and even too if maybe just seeing him snap a little bit more would have added a lot more depth to him. But easily fantastic villain, fantastic protagonist, very fun gameplay, even though it can be really easy for the most part, and an absolutely beautiful island to explore. With all this taken together, I do highly recommend Far Cry 6. I don't think this is a game that you need to pick up right now. You can definitely do it on a sale price, but it is very much worth playing if you're into FPSs and, of course, the Far Cry franchise. So with all this taken together, that is why I'm going to give Far Cry 6 a 7.5 out of 10. It is absolutely badass, makes you feel like an unstoppable guerrilla, and really gets into some politics and amazingly, like, really heavy, dark themes that kept bringing me back in. This game can get really rough at sometimes in the storytelling that it portrays. It's dark and it definitely makes you feel lost and makes you care about these characters, and then see them lose so much throughout the entire story. And it does really suck you in and bring you into the world of a revolutionary, and just how dark that can be. And very, very fun. There is an after credits scene too to this game that you should stick around for and get excited, especially if you're a fan of some of the older Far Cry games. It definitely has a little cool Easter egg at the end, so stick around for that. So if you played Far Cry 6, please let me know in the comments down below what your favorite part of it was, what location you want for Far Cry 7 when that comes out. But yeah, if you like this video, of course, give it a thumbs up. If you like what you see on the channel, subscribe to the little ring around if you want to know when I upload new videos. You can check out all my other video game reviews that I've done on this channel and everything else that I do to the playlist down below, and I also link some up top here. If you want to check out most everything that I do video game wise, there is a link in the description of this video and on my channel to my Twitch. I'm going to be playing Back 4 Blood starting today, so very, very excited to start that. So you can definitely check that out, live stream through the Twitch, and also in the same places there is a link to the Media Mountain, which is my Discord, where I talk about movies, video games, TV, comic books, music, pretty much everything that's awesome in this world. So you can definitely join that amazing community and help make it even more amazing than it is already. And yes, pick up Far Cry 6 for yourselves whenever you guys are able to. And yeah, just awesome, guys.